To Kill a Mockingbird and Gone with the Wind, and unforgettable characters such as Atticus Finch, Rhett Butler, and Scarlett O'Hara have thrilled millions of readers decade after decade. Now, there is a new treasure trove of books out there that are mostly ignored. Many self-publishing authors are just waiting to get discovered. We are encouraging readers like yourself to take a chance and read their book. You can find them on Amazon.com, Amazon on Kindle, Barnes & Nobles, Goodreads.com, and Kobo. Also on Scribd, Versa, and iBook, or hopefully soon at your nearest public library.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on our new episode of Bios to Books. I'm your host, Dan Davidson. Before I introduce today's guest author, I'd just like to thank our loyal followers for their support. And if you are new to the show, welcome aboard. If you haven't yet subscribed to our channel, please press the subscribe button and join now. It costs absolutely nothing, and it goes a long way for helping us on YouTube. Thank you. Welcome to another episode of Bios to Books. As most of our viewers are either avid readers or up-and-coming authors, I think they will find this guest author to be very interesting and extremely informative. He writes under the name R.D. Vincent and is a successful author of a series of American fairy tales and folklore consisting of 6 books in the Dunbridge collection. He is also the president of a company, National Authors in Grocery Stores program, that helps authors market and sell their books in a unique way. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Ray Depew. Welcome to the show, Ray.
Oh, thank you very much, Dan. How are you today?
I'm doing good, and you?
Very well. I'm at the Texas Book Festival here in Austin, Texas. They got over 50,000 people here and thousands of authors, and I'm running around saying hi to everybody today. So it's been a great day. Great day.
That's a great experience. Those book fairs are terrific. You get to meet other people and, fans of your type of book and things like that. So it's a nice experience, especially for a young author that's never done it before. I recommend they go to these events because it gives them a lot of experience and exposure that they wouldn't normally get.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's hard as a self-published author. You're out there in the wilderness by yourself. You're spending a gajillion dollars trying to make a go of selling 5 copies of your book. And it's just it's a never-ending battle of wits and accomplishment, and also your own self-worth, which constantly beats you down as you're doing it. But you do your very best, and I think once you start selling 1 book and then 5 books and then 10 books, it starts to roll, and then you start to get more comfortable in doing it, and you get more confident in what you're doing. And you're competing against big publishers and big names, but you can make a go of it if you're determined. And Dan, you're one of those determined people, and I think that's what makes it work.
Well, that's what this show's about too, Ray. It's it's not about me ever. It's about the guest author I have on there, because it gives, especially the new and young authors, some exposure that they normally wouldn't get. And I never make a promise that once they've been on my show, they're going to be a best-selling author or anything like that. But it does give them a little exposure, and it gives them a little confidence. And that's what it's all about. It's to help out the people that need the help. Like you say, the big publishers and the writers that are connected to them with literary agents, and so they don't need our help. It's the little guys.
I agree. Absolutely.
So we're going to talk about your company later, how you help young authors to get started too. But what I wanted to do before we get into any of that is talk a little bit about yourself. Where you've been in your life. Where you were born, where you were raised, where you went to school, everything up until the time you started writing, and whatever you're comfortable with sharing.
I'll start at the born part instead of the how I came to the world universe part. So we'll start at the born part.
That sounds good.
I'll tell you, I was born in Goshen, New York. I was born in a little hospital that doesn't even exist anymore, that I think was probably turned into a theme park at this point. Not because I was born there, just because of commodities and the way the world is. And, it's an interesting thing. I was born on a little farm, born to parents that had a little hobby farm, and later on had a brother, sister born. And we grew up in Orange County, New York. And Orange County's got one of the oldest histories in the of the counties in New York as it is. And my family came to America in 1621. We were on the ship Fortune behind the
Wow.
Mayflower, landed
Okay.
in Michigan, or not Michigan, landed in Massachusetts.
Right.
And from there, our family spread out across the United States. Some were publishers, some were senators, some were just businessmen, businesswomen. They grew out their entire lives throughout the entire United States, and our family stayed in New York. In fact, I was probably about the seventh generation born in New York,
Wow.
and my grandmother was a very strong matriarch in our family, and she'd always tell us stories, and nobody listened to her except me. And I'd listen to everything she had to say. She'd tell me about the Depression. She'd tell me about things that happened with her mother and everything. It was my great grandmother. She told me some stories that just blew my mind. I think one story that was always sticks out in my mind was my great 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 grandmother. That's how the story started out. Had a farm. Now her husband was off to war, the Revolutionary War at the time, and he was serving in the Continental Army, and she was taking care of the farm by herself. Well, she was closing down the barn one evening, and she noticed up over the rise of the little hills that were in her farm fields, she saw a bunch of torches marching up over the hill. Well, she got nervous and she got her shotgun and she decides to go crawl up that hill. Now, you think about this, someone gonna take on an entire army of torches with one gun, but she's gonna do it. And that's how determined she was. But
Wow.
she crawled over bogs and everything else. And at one point she lost her shotgun, but she kept going. And because she wanted to know who was getting on her farm.
Sure.
And she gets on over the edge and she looks up and she starts seeing that all the soldiers are wearing blue coats. And now for most of the army, the Revolutionary War, they didn't have blue coats because a lot of them couldn't even afford it. Most of them were just farmers.
Some of them didn't even have shoes, right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And but she noticed some of these soldiers themselves, the higher ranking soldiers, are wearing these blue coats and whatnot. She realized it was a Continental Army. Well, she goes over and greets them, and a tall man comes out of one of the tents and goes over and says, "Madam, do you mind if we camp on your farm for this evening?" And you know who the guy was that she greeted? George
Huh?
Washington.
Wow.
And so they
Wow.
camped there on her farm for the evening. And the next day, when she woke up to go see if they were still there, they were all gone. The camp was cleared out. And the only thing that was there was a cauldron that they were using to make soup the night before. And that cauldron stayed in our family to this day.
Wow. That's amazing.
And
That's history.
it is, and that's the kind of stories I was told growing up when I was a kid. We had stories of witches, we had stories of Panterlub's mythical creatures, we had stories of you know bakers and farmers and fortune tellers, you name it. And she would tell me all these tales, and I eventually said to my grandmother, I said, "Where did all this come from?" And she told me, your family's lived in the United States for 400 years, and all these tales have been passed along from grandmother to grandchild for generations. And well, I took to the pen, took to the writing,
Yeah,
and
I was going to say I read in your autobiography that your grandma was a big inspiration for you writing that series.
oh, it is. And in fact, those stories are all in that series. And I
Wow.
ended up building the world of Dunbridge to preserve everything that she told me for generations to come. And, I sold over 55,000 books in the country. I went out in Colorado, the Dakotas, Mississippi, New York, Florida, Alabama, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas. I went all over the country selling my books, and it was amazing. But originally I am from New York, but moved to Texas about 12 years ago. And everyone says, "How the hell did you get down to Texas?" And I said, "My ex-wife brought me down here," and that's a fact. So
Uh-huh.
yeah, I was married less than 7 months, and didn't work out. But I'm a stubborn son of a gun, and I put my foot down and I said, "I'm staying here in Texas." So I stayed and I built a life for myself. And I met my second wife, and we built our family together, built our house together. We have two kids, and it's an amazing life that we've built together. And a lot of people, sit there and say, "Oh, my wife," or my kids." But you want to know something? I'm glad I can say my wife, my kids.
Sure.
It's been an amazing experience. It really
That's
has.
great. Yeah. I find the people of Texas overall are super great people. They really are.
They really are. I think, Southerners in general get a bad rap, and, I don't know why, but I don't think I've ever been welcomed more than when I came down to the South. And, I tell people, it's not about politics. It's not about anything else. It's not about this or that. It's about the community that you get invited into. And
Right.
I've always grown up with people that were, older than I was. I was the firstborn in my family. So I was always around people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s,
Uh,
and even 90s. And I loved it. I loved listening to their stories. I loved what they had to say, and I loved learning from them.
sure.
And, I'd like to say a lot of their spirit lives in me as I go around in the world, and I appreciate that about people. But, we, I sit there looking at the country, and I look at the things that are going on, and I don't want to get too deep into all the politics and stuff, but I kind of laugh at, like, a lot of things that are going on. Everyone's like, "Oh my God, eggs are going up. Oh my God, it's inflation. It's inflation. It's this. We got to raise interest rates. We got it." And everyone doesn't think about the fact that there's an avian flu going on. So they're having to take care of chickens, and now the price of eggs are going up. That's why,
Right,
or
right.
they're not. People are not forgetting they're forgetting the basics. I mean, so many people are into their cell phones, their computers, and everything else. They're not using their brains of common sense. I mean, we had a pandemic, for goodness sakes, and farmers produced less.
Yeah.
Industries produced less because nobody was buying it, and now all of a sudden everybody wants it in a hurry. Well, they haven't caught up to getting caught up to what everybody wants today. So everybody needs to settle down. And I bring all that stuff up because why am I even talking about that? This is a book show. Well, it's a bio. The point of this is I learned this from my family. The elderly in my family the elders in my family told me these stories of the depression and the things that happened in the past. And
Yeah.
the biggest thing you learn in your own biography is that history repeats itself. And if it wasn't for their generation explaining it to me, I don't think I could grasp what was going on today. So
Well,
that was a big deal.
I agree with you. I mean, this show is not about politics, so I'm not going to get into that. But
No, no, no.
the one thing I do agree with, what bothers me more than anything, uh, and again, I don't want to get into this too deep, but what offends me more than anything is that we have so many people in this country right now willing to snub our history, our
Right.
flag, our anthem, and the things that matter. And that really bugs me. What you're saying is very true. But, get past the economics of it all. It's the attitude and the lack of patriotism by a lot of people in this country that really bothers me.
Well, I think, Dan, it's beyond politics. I think the thing is people have gotten so used to seeing the older generation getting put into the 55 and older community or into the nursing home, and they forget about it. And
Yeah.
what they're forgetting is they're literally closing the book on the history of what built this country. And for me, that's been a big deal to learn about and to get involved and understand about. And I told you the whole story of everything going on with economics because that's the stories I was told by my grandparents of what was going on in the 20s and 30s in
Sure.
America. And
Sure.
to learn from them made me have like a different appreciation for what's going on today. The
Hmm.
same things that are going on today were going on back in the 20s and 30s. I
And
mean, we were
before
dealing
that,
with,
too.
and we were dealing with hyperinflation and all these other terms that were thrown out there. We were even dealing with social distancing at one point in the 1900s because you had the Spanish flu going on.
Absolutely.
But you wouldn't know about it if you didn't pay attention to history or talk to people who lived it. And
Very
I
true.
think as an author, I've appreciated spending time with the greatest generation.
Right.
And, I think I've learned from them. And I find it sad that, so many people have ignored them and so many
Yep.
people have not, sat back and listened and learned from them. You know, it's not about people sitting in a rocking chair telling you boring stories. There's lessons to be learned. You know, who is it? The Oracle of Omaha, the famous. I can't. He's a famous investor. I can't think of his name. What's his name? There, the famous investor, not Rupert Murdoch, the other guy.
Oh, I'm trying to think of who you're referring to. You said Nebraska?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So what is his name? He loves he's Berkshire Hathaway is his company. I can't think of his name, but there was a interesting story. He's a big history buff, and he's a person that always pays attention to what happens. And he told a story that he was watching what was going to happen with the economy because he'd sit outside his porch stoop every day and watch the trains go by and see if they were pulling less commodity or more commodity, and he would know what the wave of the future is going to be. And everyone's like, you know, and that's just interesting, you know, but you wouldn't know
Right,
that if you
right,
didn't sit down and listen to his story or read
right.
about him or something.
I
So,
know who you're talking about. I can't think of his name. I can see his face right now.
yeah, me too. I can't, I can't.
I'll think of it after the show's
Oh
over, of
yeah, I
course.
know. That's how it runs, you know?
Yeah, but no, what you said, like I said, I want to step away from this a little bit because we don't want to politicize the show. But
Right, right,
like
right.
like I said, the thing is that when these things were going on with the Greatest Generation, and even before that, when we had tragedies and tough times, they never politicized it. Now they do, and
Yeah,
that's what bothers me.
yeah. It's
That's what bothers.
it's a different world, you know, it but I think authors have a lot of power if they use it the right way. I think they have a way to get their message out, their stories out that they never had before. I mean, there's no more of this, you know, send your book to a publishing house and hope to God they take my book. You know, it's
Yep,
not like that anymore. Now you have a self-publishing world where you can sit there and send it out and publish it yourself and now get
yep,
your books out there. And I think that is changing society a lot and getting the message out there. And forums like this, you know, to talk about books. And I mean, when I wrote Dunbridge, I mean, my whole goal was to preserve my grandparents' stories. I didn't want them lost to time.
right.
Who knew that they were going to take off and go all over the country? I mean, I would never have dreamed that. But you know, I mean, is it successful? Yeah. Am I a millionaire from it? No. Did I have a goal to be a millionaire from writing books? No. But I enjoyed going out there and talking to people and meeting people and helping people, you
Sure.
know, and I think I live that spirit of my grandparents every day by meeting people like yourself and going around and, you know, trying to help other authors, helping them get their books published if they need to do that, or getting them connections at least to make it happen,
Right.
you know. But I would rather, the biggest lesson I learned from my grandparents, when you learn something and you can help others with what you learn, share it with them, you know. And that's what I've done, you know. And I like living by that code. You know, it's a good code to live by, and it's what this country is founded on, and it's what, you know, we were a community then, and we can be a community now. We don't need to be a bunch of silos living in homes. You know, everybody can talk to everybody. I mean, programs like this bring people together to talk about topics and talk about things. It doesn't always have to be controversial. You know,
No,
it can
no.
be as interesting as baking an apple pie, or it could be as, you know, uninteresting as making a birdhouse.
Well, the thing is, even if it is controversial, if the two people or the groups that are discussing that controversial issue don't become, what's the word I'm looking for? Don't start with the vitriol and the nastiness, and just talk about their differences and let the people that are listening decide who they think is right and wrong. It would work a lot better. Right now, everybody on both sides of the spectrum seem to think that attacking and saying nasty things and accusing is the answer to everything, and it's not. It doesn't solve anything.
No, I
What's
mean,
up?
look,
Yeah,
when I start when so I'm the third president to run the authors and grocery stores program, and you know, I think it's one of the nicest community events and community programs we've ever created. We don't get involved in nitpicking or anything else. We're there to help each other, and that's the kind of thing that I'm proud of. You know, I don't really want to get into all this, you know, negative. I call it negative sludge.
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
that's what it
yeah.
turns into. And I'm not interested in that. And
It does. Yeah, it doesn't accomplish anything,
no,
really.
no, no, yeah, and we lose time is so precious.
Right.
And I think people forget that. I was reading a wonderful story the other day about well, actually, it was a story on Facebook, and I was reading about a woman who was talking about how it was the 5-year anniversary of her husband's accident. Now, he survived the accident, or so I've read that he did. But the point is when something so tragic happens in your life, you start to really think about everything. You think about time, family, life, community. When my grandfather passed away, my grandmother pulled me aside and said to me, "You know what I regret?" And I said, "What's that?" She says, "Every dumb argument I had with your grandfather." I said,
Yeah.
"It wasn't worth it," she said. "I wasted so much time and anger over nothing." Because at the end of the day, when he was gone, what did it accomplish? I didn't win a prize.
Right.
Nobody was
Right.
pinning a medal to me. It was pointless. And it is. It
Yeah.
absolutely is pointless.
Yeah. It is. But it's part of our makeup as human beings. We tend to do that from time to time. But like you say, it doesn't accomplish anything.
No, no. And, it's funny. I've traveled all over the country and I've met so many authors and I've worked with so many different kinds of books and seen so many different children's books, memoirs. But I'll tell you the stories. I like fiction. Fiction's been fun to read for me, but I always like personal memoir stories, and they've just been something of interest for me. And I mean, my books with the Dunbridge series, they're kind of a personal memoir because I basically memorialized my entire family and my entire family's history into a fictional book series forever. Not
Yeah.
too many people can say they've done that,
No.
and I'm proud of that. I'm not proud that I mean, yeah, I sold books, but that wasn't the point. The point was I got to crystallize my family's history forever,
Right.
and I,
Right.
I think that was a huge accomplishment.
Yeah.
That's a huge
Yeah.
accomplishment.
I mean, I read a little bit of your first book. Like I said, I've been behind the times with my illnesses, so I haven't had the opportunity to read the entire book, first book. But I mean, I consider it historical fiction too, without a
Yes.
doubt. I mean, there's a lot of history in there,
Oh yeah.
and yeah. So yes, it is a personal memoir, but there's a lot of history in there.
Yeah, and it's funny you bring that up. I based the entire town of Dunbridge on the Hudson Valley, and I made it a fictional neighboring town of the town of Sleepy Hollow.
Uh
And
huh.
I think, I myself am a huge Washington Irving fan, so I always like Sleepy Hollow, Rip Van Winkle, the stories
Yep.
he would tell. And, he's an American author, and he just, not too many people know this, but Sleepy Hollow is only 10,000 words. But I
Yeah.
mean, it was a
Yeah.
story that lasted forever,
Absolutely.
you know,
Still less. Yep.
and and I think that in itself was interesting to me, and I just always loved the history and the culture of New York in that Hudson Valley area. And
Right.
you've got Henry Hudson, they're discovering that the Hudson Valley, the changing of the guard there when it was the capital was Amsterdam, and then it was, or Kingston, excuse me, was the capital. And then they went to Albany as the capital. And just interesting history there,
Right.
and most of New York, most people don't realize, was covered in an ocean, a shallow ocean at one point, and then that ocean receded. And if you ever travel up to the northwest portion of New York, you can actually find fossils just laying on the side of the road, which
Wow.
I think is a really cool thing. And I was
Yeah.
something else I really got involved in was fossils and looking at the histories of how states formed and stuff. Not the states formed in the government. I'm talking about the geographical formation of the United States and how that happened. And I
Right.
think that was an amazing history within itself over millions and millions of years. So
Yeah, to me, upstate New York has so much history. I mean, I like the Revolutionary War and the French and Indian War.
yeah,
So there's a lot up there. Herkimer County, all that area there. Was it Orinsky Point where they had that massacre or something up there during the Revolutionary War?
The
I
Boston Massacre up in that was one. The
Yeah,
Tea
yeah,
Party.
yeah,
And
yes.
it's funny they say that the Boston Harbor is 0.01% caffeinated. And I said I can't believe the Boston Tea Party caused that, but you never know.
It could. You never can tell. You never can tell.
That's
Yeah,
one strong cup of tea right there.
that's for sure. That's for sure. But yeah, like I said, I love that history up there. There's a lot to look at. I've been up there a couple of times, and I enjoyed it up there. It was
It's
really interesting.
beautiful. It's very rich history, and I think that was a lot of that helped me in my own creativity when I was writing my book series. Capturing a lot of the landscapes.
Sure.
There was a couple stories. There was a story of a a woman who would predict the future in the town, and every time she would say something, it would come true. Well, one day the townspeople had enough with her predicting the future and dubbed her to be a witch. Well, they hunted her down and brought her into a cemetery and hung her. I mean,
Wow.
that was, and this is 1700s. It's a long time ago. And I'm just like, you know, it was just stuff you wouldn't even imagine happened in this town. There was a girl that was found on the side of the road, and this is in the 1700s, and they thought she was dead. And they looked at her and said, "Yeah, she's dead." And the mother and father buried her in the same cemetery. And about a month later, grave robbers went into that cemetery and they dug up her cemetery. And when they dug up her cemetery and they opened her coffin, they saw she was wearing a ring. So they went to go take the ring off and they couldn't get the ring off. So they decided they were going to go cut her finger to go get the ring off. The instant they did that, Dan, she came to life. They had
Wow.
buried her alive and she was in a coma for a month at a slow breathing underneath the ground. And she woke up at that moment. She lived 85 years after that moment. And
I have I have a feeling those grave robbers quit their job after that.
they, in fact, that grave was robbed never again after that
I'm
moment, which was
sure.
interesting. But I actually got to go on it. My grandmother took me on a little tour of her entire adventure where that girl went. And when she woke up from the grave, the first door she knocked on was my great 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 grandmother's door, which was a red door, and that red door is still on that house to this day,
Wow.
which was just amazing.
That
So
is. That is. Wow. Have you been up there to see that?
I have. I've actually seen the cemetery where all that happened, and that tree, that creepy old tree, is dead now, but part of it is still hanging out there, which I
Wow.
was just like, my God,
Wow.
it was just amazing stuff. She would tell
Did,
me a story about a guy who used to go around door to door with a wagon and a horse, and you never guessed, Dan, what he was selling for 10 cents out of his cart. He was selling fresh bread,
wow.
10 cents a loaf, and he would deliver it to your house.
Wow. 10 cents a loaf. Yeah.
Yeah,
Talk about inflation.
yeah, exactly. I mean, when are
Wow.
you going to have bread delivered to your house unless it's through Kroger or something else?
Yeah. Not too
Yeah,
often. That's for sure. Yeah. Not
yeah.
fresh bread anyway. Yeah.
Especially 10 cents, forget it.
Yeah. That's funny. That's,
I asked her how much did he charge if he cut the bread? She didn't tell me.
so when you said you mentioned the house that had the red door,
Yeah.
is that still owned by your family or is
No, that's been sold that was sold about 100 years ago to another family that owned the house. But it's just interesting, the history of it. My grandfather, he's got some amazing history on his side. His family were French trappers, and he himself, my grandfather, served in World War II with General Patton, and he was in the
oh
Third Army. And that was an amazing story listening to him. And he got to hear all Patton's speeches and everything. And,
yeah, yeah.
but the funniest story he told me was the war was over and he was in England being ready to be sent back home to America. So they were
Right.
getting the ships ready to go. And he was bored and he decided that he wanted to go do something. So the U.S. Army was selling motorcycles, Harley Davidson motorcycles they were selling. And he said, you know, I'm going to go buy one of them. He says, how much do you want for it? The guy says $5. So he gives him a $5 bill for the Harley Davidson motorcycle. And he's driving it all over England for a month. Well, I said, Grandpa, where's this Harley Davidson motorcycle today? He says, I sold it. I said, who'd you sell it to? He said, I sold it to an Englishman. I said, how much did you get for it? He said, $3. I said, you bought it for $5 and sold it for $3. Why did you do that? He says, because I got $2 of enjoyment out of it. So I was good to go.
There you go.
And that's what he said. So
that's one way to look at it. That's
yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Amazing. Yep. So pretty much let's move on to your books, the Don Bridge series, and like I said, I understood from what I read that your grandma was a big influence on the stories, and I'm interested in your take on the entire series. I know we can't talk about them page by page, of course, but yeah, if you want to just give the audience a little bit of an idea of what they're all about and where they begin and where they end.
Sure.
We can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So they're a 6-book series. They start off with the Ring of Lazarus, then they go on to the Legend of Tamarack Hill, the Miracles of Midwife Sutton. Then it's the Hermit of Mapes Ravine, the Lost Princess of Lenape Valley, and the last book is the Four Talisman. And it works on a back and forth kind of like series. So there's a little bit of a time warp that goes on. The first book starts off in like the early 1700s, then it goes back 35 years before that. Then the third book goes back to the present time. Then it goes back again 300 years. And it goes back and forth developing all these characters. You've got medicine men, medicine women. You've got panterlubs, which are mythical creatures. You have a Nightin King, which is in the series, which is the soul of a lost Viking ship captain that was cursed by a witch. And there's a lot of battle of good and evil in the story and everything, and a lot of creativity that went into this book of a lot of the old-time things that people don't talk about, like carbide lanterns. Nobody even knows what a carbide lantern is today, but those are the lanterns that they were used in the mines, and they would light up because of a chemical reaction, and that's how they made the green light as they would go down into the mines, and they would be talking about that and stuff. And it's just a lot of neat little things that are in the series, and there's a heroine in the series known as Midwife Sutton, and she has saved the town countless times. And every time she saved the town has a quick memory that they just forget that she saved the town all the other times. And, but the series goes through all 6 books, and it kind of is sad in some ways. I don't want to give away everything that happens in the books, but it is sad in the end what happens to the town, but it also has hope to it as well. And, I think it's amazing how there's a lot of symbolism in my books. When you finally get up to the 6th and final book, there's a scene in there where a massive tragedy is happening, but it was set in place 400 years earlier by the Lenape people to save the town from a curse, or save the entire world from a curse that would have destroyed all of humanity. And, what happens to the town of Dunbridge in that process, and the people that save it in the end to make sure that it's preserved for all time, I'm telling you this right now, and it's got the hairs on my back kind of standing up, and I've almost got tears coming in my own eyes, because it makes me sad in kind of ways, because when I wrote the 6th and final book to the series, I felt like I was putting an end to my grandmother and grandfather's stories and everything. Right. And putting a period at the end of that statement, and writing the 6th book was probably the hardest thing I could do, and I had all I could do to finish writing the last page. And it was something. I mean, it was wonderful to do that. My grandmother got to read the first 4 books of the series. She did not get to read the 5th and 6th book because she had passed away in 2016. But my great aunt, who is her sister, who is also part of this whole thing, she is still alive to this day, and she has read all of my books. Amazing. And she's absolutely loved them. And she herself has become one of the characters in the book series. And she actually is, as you'll find out, Midwife Sutton in the series. But I don't want to give it all away. you'll make the conclusions as you read the series. But DunbridgeSeries.com is the website to check out the books. DunbridgeSeries.com. The new series that just came out is called American Fables, and the first of 5 books has already been published, and they're all micro tales of the Dunbridge characters that were in the series. So you get to read a little bit more about those characters. And the nice part about my series is my grandmother would cook. She'd cook and bake while she would tell these tales to us. So at the end of every story, you can actually make the recipes she was making with us during those tales. So you can make them all. There's over, I'd say 80 recipes in the complete series. So
Wow.
it's just a wonderful tribute to her, which I'm really proud of.
It sounds like a marvelous series, a very very interesting, especially if you like history. I mean, based on what you've just said and what I read earlier on, though, it sounds like it's historical fiction, a little bit of folklore, a little bit of fantasy. It sounds really good. It really does.
It is. And, I tried to send it off to Source Books, for example, or all these. I don't think there's any market for a book like that. I sent it off to some literary agents, and they're like, oh, there's no market for a book like that. They were
Hmm.
wrong. And
Of
that's
course,
okay, because I mean, I sold more than one of their own authors would sell in whatever. And that just proves that they're not the gods of answers. The
no,
the
they're
the
not.
publishing houses don't know everything,
They don't.
and
No.
they're just trying to predict the market, but they don't know what a person's going to buy or everything. They just have an idea. And if I've said this over and over again, if you believe in what you wrote, you believe in the stories you tell, you can
Right.
sell a ton of books in your lifetime. And I've seen that over and over and over again. And I mean, I wouldn't have been able to sell that many books if I sat down and just took all everybody's, words at face value that you can't do this.
No, yeah, you be. I spoke to a literary agent. I guess maybe 2 years back. We were on the phone for a while. Nothing came of it, of course. But one thing she did say to me that intrigued me and interested me. I mean, there was an honesty about her statement. She says, a lot of times a publishing house or a literary agent are going to tell you what they feel and what they think is interesting. Not so much the reality of what's going on, but more of their own feelings towards a genre or a particular subject matter. And I
That's
always
right.
I always remembered that. I
That's
mean,
right.
I
You're right.
appreciated that.
You're right. And
So
and I mean, Dan, they sit there talking about authors sending out books to like 100 literary agents and 100 publishing houses before they actually get published. And that's true because you're looking for the one person that's going to appreciate what you wrote.
exactly, yeah,
And,
yeah,
and that in itself is difficult. But my family's been in politics. We ran for public office. I was an elected official. My brother was an elected official. And why am I bringing that up? Because we realized that the only way we were going to get elected is go door to door to door to door to go get somebody's vote and let
right.
them meet you and get to know you. And I did the same thing when I was a self-published, or when I was, as a self-published author. I went out to meet the public and tell them about my book and do it myself. And
That's what you have to
that's what
do.
made me successful.
Yeah.
Not sitting at home and hoping they sell on the internet. Forget
Well,
that.
no, that doesn't work.
No,
Well, you have the energy. I can see that. You have the energy and the desire to do what you do. And that's important. I mean, I'm at a little different point in my life. I'm 80 years old. I've been
no, you're
writing,
not. You're 35. We talked about this
whatever.
earlier.
That's right. You're right, 35. But I've been writing historical fiction now for maybe, I don't know, 20 years, maybe a little less than that. Before I did that, I used to write screenplays, which is impossible.
Oh,
Unless you know somebody, it's impossible. But anyway,
yep,
I don't want to
agreed.
get into that.
No,
But
that's
when I
another
start,
hour conversation, Dan.
exactly. But writing, my aspect, my outlook on writing now is I write just to tell a story. I don't, if it sells, it sells. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Because I'm at that age now. I'm not going to get famous. I'm not going to get rich. So I write what I want to write, and whoever enjoys it, enjoys it. If they don't, they don't. I appreciate honesty. So if somebody tells me it's not my type of story or it sucks, whatever they say, I haven't had that happen, but I've had people tell me it's not my type of story. So I'm okay with that.
No, you'll get the, well, bless your heart, you wrote a book.
Right, exactly. Yeah, yeah. At least you did that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly, exactly.
exactly. Yeah, but
But
I mean, so I'm in a little different. If I was a little younger, I would hope I had your energy and drive to do what you do because that's what you need. You need
well,
that if you want to move forward with your books.
I mean, look, I've got a 3-year-old daughter. Her name's Mila, and I got a 9-year-old son that's Nicholas. And they demand a lot of my time. And then I even have my wife too. And trying to do all this stuff, run a community program with the books, work a full-time job, write, and also be there as father and husband is it's a lot. You at the end of the day, I used to joke when I was 21. I said I've got more energy than the sun. The sun's going to run out of power before I do. But as I'm getting older, I'm seeing my vision is going, my back is hurting, my knees are killing me. And it's like unless I'm going to transfer into an Elon Musk Optimus robot or something, I don't
Right.
know what's going to happen next. But
Well,
I do have energy, yeah, and I do fight for people always. But it's I think the older I've gotten, the more precious I've looked at as time. And, you know, I don't, I had a surgery, a procedure, and I don't want to get into what it was, but at the beginning of the year, and they put me under. And Dan, it was like a light switch was shut off on my brain, almost like shutting off a computer. I don't
yeah,
remember anything. I didn't, I'd have a consciousness going on. I had nothing. And that scared me and really put me into a new appreciation for life that I had of an appreciation for life before, but now it was more real for me
yeah,
to see that feeling that at any moment you could be shut off. And
yeah,
I'm not trying to get into the religious aspects of it or what happens in an afterlife. That's not where I'm going with this. I'm just talking about live each day as though it's your last.
yeah.
And that's the motto I've gone by. And I make sure that I have no regrets. And my grandmother, when she passed away, I was like, it broke me. I'm not going to kid you. And my daughter now has my grandmother's middle name, so her name is Mila Evelyn Depew. That's my daughter, and she has my spirit of my grandmother, like no other. Even her mannerisms and stuff. But my point is, I sat there listening to people at the funeral talking about my grandmother and how they wish they had gone to see her and how they wish they had spent time with her. I had spent every waking moment that I could with her, going to garage sales, going to do things with her. And, I was sad she was gone because I missed my best friend, but I didn't have regrets that I didn't spend time with her.
Exactly. You didn't have
And
any
I
regrets
felt
with
great
that. Yeah,
about that,
that's right. That's right.
you know?
And you'll always have that.
Yeah.
You'll always have those memories, and that's important. I was pretty close to my grandma. My grandma was a flapper in the 20s, hanging around with gangsters and stuff. So she had an interesting life too. But I picked her brain from the time I was old enough to know how to pick a brain, and
Yeah.
I learned a lot from her. And it's like an open book in history, like you said. It's something once it's gone, it's gone.
Yeah.
And so to tap into that is what people fail to do, and it's sad. It really is.
It is
It's
sad.
very sad.
It's awful, and it's awful for us. But you want to know something? I'm more worried about my own family and everything else. And at one point, I'm saying to myself, you know what? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't shove their head in the trough and make them drink it.
Exactly.
And at the end of the day, people are going to make good choices. They're going to make themselves, and I've learned that over and over again. And honestly, at the end of the day, I'm proud of what I've done, and I'm proud of the family that I've made, and I'm proud of the people that I've inspired and the people that I've worked with, and
Right.
everybody to me, becomes part of my community and my network. But
Right.
of course, there are some folks that want to push the envelope and go the other way. Good for them.
No, you're right. Yeah, there are people that are that way. I think anybody that reads your series, if they get what they should get out of it, they may be more inclined to start looking at their own lives and the history in their families, and maybe start being a little bit more
I would
active
agree.
in that.
I
Yeah.
would agree with that, Dan. I mean, we grew up in a time, and I can say this. I'm 43 years old, and I remember this. where there were no bars on windows, there were no locks. There's screen doors were open. You can go
Sure.
visit the Walters next door, the Smiths up the street, or whatever you wanted to. And it was not, you'd knock first. You wouldn't just let yourself in. But those days are over.
Oh
I,
yeah,
I mean,
they are.
we've become a siloed society, and sad. When you read Dunbridge, people will read some of the things that are going on in that book and think it's fiction, but it wasn't fiction. It was real. That
It's
was
what
how people.
happened.
That's how the world was before terrorism and all this other stuff that's just scared the living stuff out of everybody. And
Right.
you know, the
It's
awful tragedies that have happened in this country are sad beyond
it's
belief.
sad. Yeah.
And I know it's political, but I just that's why the old society and the old ways are gone, because they've just been destroyed.
They have been
And
destroyed.
we'll never see that stuff again. And
No.
it's sad. It really
It is.
is.
Well,
But I,
I'm
I
a.
feel I feel that Dunbridge really gives insight into a world that's been preserved in a bubble, its own Brigadoon, if you will. And I welcome people to go read it and get into it and enjoy it. So
I think if they read it, they will enjoy it.
yeah.
You were talking about when you were young. I'm a little older than you, not much, but a little bit. And I remember as a kid, I lived in New York, in Queens, in New York, when I was growing up, in a neighborhood that was middle class. But at night, we used to go out and play until it got dark and things like
Yep.
that. But when your mother called you to come home, if you didn't answer or you didn't go home, you heard the neighbors calling, you heard the neighbor's neighbor calling, and it was like a chain reaction.
You can hear the
Everybody
phones
looked
through the
out for
open
you.
windows.
Yeah, exactly. And everybody worried about everybody. So,
Yep.
there was always that's what you're talking about, that type of society. We don't have that no more.
No, no. I beg to say that most people don't even know their neighbors, and nor do they want to even get to know them, you
Now,
know?
maybe they may wave at them and stuff like that, but that's about it.
Yeah,
That's about it.
that's about
It's,
it.
it's
I think people have been made afraid to get to know their neighbors. And
right.
I think some of the, as fiction writers and as authors, we write fictions and everything else, but, you know, I think in some of these fantasies, people have taken them so literally and then found out that there are really people that are bad that are just like in the movies that really do exist. And I think people don't want to find out that it's the neighbor next door that's a Jeffrey Dahmer or God knows whoever else they're going to find, you know,
That's true. That's true.
and I think that's, wow. It's funny. I remember a movie, Contact with Jodie Foster, and they found a alien signal coming into Earth, and they were trying to translate what it meant, and finally to get to the point where she's going to travel to go see them in this thing they created, and the alien, when she finally meets him, says, "You have such a beautiful culture and so many beautiful dreams, and yet horrible nightmares." And I listened to that little speech that the alien was given, Jodie Foster, and I said, "My God, we create our own nightmares or our own heaven."
Yeah, that's a very profound statement that alien made.
Yeah, and it's true though,
Yeah, it is true. It is true.
you know.
Yes. Yeah,
So it's we make our own nightmares and we make our own hell and we make our own heaven.
that's
And
for sure. Yeah,
if people want to live in hell, boy, you sure as hell can make it burn. But if you want to make it heaven, you can make it sweet and peaceful.
yep. It's up to you.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
What I want to do now is I want to talk about your company. I want to let you talk about your
Yeah.
company, but usually the audience has a few questions,
Sure.
that they usually send in and stuff. I'm only going to go through a couple today because I want to
Sure. Go ahead.
I,
Sure.
I want time for you to talk about your company. So usually the first question they always ask is something we already spoke about several times, but it's what do you think about the difference between self-publishing a book and trying to get a literary agent or a big publishing house to publish your book?
Oh, I love this question, and I'm going to snuggle right in here and tell you this. I love self-publishing, and I think self-publishing has gotten a bad name from big publishing houses. There were some people out there that were printing garbage books. I mean, they were not doing a good job in doing quality. But then for the rest of us there's 1.7 million self-published authors in the United States who print and publish brand new books, 1.3 million books a year. I want you all to hear this very clearly, self-published authors. You outnumber professionally published authors. Congratulations.
That's interesting.
You're the largest amount of published authors in the world. You outnumber them. They would have every big publishing house would have to take every author that has died in time and bring them and the ones that are published today to even come close to all the published authors that are self-published authors. So
Wow.
think about that. And why am I bringing that up? I don't like sitting. If you want a piece of pie at a Thanksgiving table, right? And you want to eat the whole pie, great. But if you want to share your pie with 20 people, there's going to be 20 slices and your pie is going to get smaller and smaller and smaller by the time you're done. That's what's going to happen every time you got to start handing out a piece of your pie. I talked to a publishing house today, and they were talking about how they want to distribute. They want distribution. That's great and everything. You want to get a big bulk of cash and walk away, that's fine. But if you're an author, you're the one that's going to be getting pennies on the book. You're not going to be getting dollars. So that's my answer to that. Self-publishing is the way to go. If you want to, and if you're energetic, go for it. But if you're not, keep fighting to go into literary agents and stuff like that and go that way.
That's a good answer. It's exactly the way I feel too. Yeah, it's discouraging to just go in that one path, trying to get a literary agent or a publishing house when you have the opportunity to get your work out there, self-published.
Now, I will tell you, there are small presses out there, small publishing houses. They do really well by authors. And, because they got to make a living too. So they make
Sure.
it worthwhile both ways.
Sure.
And, some of them really are great packaging companies and do some great work. I've seen some. But, when it gets into the big ones, you're going to be like a little minnow inside the ocean when you get up there to the bigger houses.
Yep.
So.
Well, even with self-publishing, we've spoken about this ourselves together. I don't want to mention the one I use, but I mean they're a good company. They're a very good company. They produce a quality product, but they're very expensive. Whereas there's other smaller companies, and some of them that can give you quality production of your book too.
For a good price.
Much less, right, so you have to shop around a little bit. But like I said, I'm not bad mouthing the company I use.
No, it has nothing to do with that. It comes down to human logic. I mean, are you going to spend $10 a gallon for gas or $2 a gallon for gas?
Exactly.
You need to shop the same thing when you're doing publishing. Now, you may know nothing of the publishing field, but take the time and do the research.
Exactly.
You can hunt for an editor, hunt for a formatter, hunt for an illustrator, hunt for whatever, and you could put them all together and maybe save money doing it that way.
Sometimes it works, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, you're starting to work with some of our people in our program that are helping you out, Dan. And yes. I think you've had a pretty good experience so far.
Yep. So I've had an excellent experience so far.
So,
yes.
It's just, if you got the contacts, you can go far.
Sure. So I want to move on to a couple other quick questions. Then I want you to talk about your company. Another common question that comes up as an author now, do you experience writer's block, and what do you do if you do experience it?
This is not the first time I've been asked this question, and I'm so overly creative that I don't have enough time to write everything that's in my brain. And so, I don't know, like I'll sit down and I've written a book in 3 weeks. I'll just sit down and go write the whole damn thing in a matter of hours because the ideas come to me. And what I've found is writer's block has nothing to do with anything other than the fact of clarity. And what I've done is as you know, I write a lot of my books with nature and a lot of the environment around me when I write them. So when I've kind of like hit a stump or need an idea for a story, I'll go take a walk in a national park. By the
Right.
time I'm out of there, I'm recharged and I'm ready to go because I've saw a bunch of things, saw a bunch of ideas that, made sense to me.
Right. Right.
And I sometimes I get stumped on what to do with certain characters and books, and I go back on my own youth and go back on stuff my grandmother told me. I was having a problem where I was trying to have the whole town leave in I think it was I'm trying to think which book number it was. I think it was either book 4 or book 5. No, it was book 4. I was trying to get the whole town of Dunbridge to leave, and I'm like, how do you get a whole town to leave? And then something I remembered from my grandmother telling me a story, some towns would actually pack up and go as a town to a fair together. As a community, they'd go to a county fair together, all of
Wow.
them, and leave only a certain amount of people behind to go take care of the town while they were all gone.
Wow.
And that would leave a town vulnerable in some ways. And some of them would come home to, you know, gangsters taking over towns and stuff like not gangsters,
Sure.
but like, you know, these, I can't remember the name of it. It's not called a gangster. It's, oh God, I can't think of the name of it, but there was one that happened in Goshen, and he was one of the worst notorious guys that they ever had. And they ended up hanging him in the
Yeah.
town, him and his whole gang that they had, but they were,
Criminals.
criminals. They were, and but they would rob banks like Jesse James and all them. But
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was interesting, So writer's block, I find, is it happens, but find your point of clarity that makes it better for you to open up to what you're. If you're writing about buildings and stuff, take a walk through a city. If you're writing about natural things, take a walk through a park. If
Yeah.
you're, immerse yourself in the real to bring you back to the fantasy.
Right. That's good advice. I myself have never experienced writer's block. I'm like you. When I sit down to write a story, I write the story
Yep.
from beginning to end. But there are people that do experience it, but I can't relate to it because I never have experienced it myself. But that's good advice.
Yep.
I got one more question for you that's going to lead you right into talking about your company a little bit, and that is, what advice do you give? What's the best way you pursue marketing a book?
Wow. Look, I've tried everything. I've tried for Amazon payments to try to do the Amazon stints. I've tried the Facebook stuff. I've tried the Twitter stuff. I've tried the Instagram stuff. I've tried flyers. I've tried book festivals. I've tried newspaper ads. Sometimes I couldn't buy newspaper ads for a lot, so I'd take an ad out in the personals and sit there
Okay.
doing it that way. And I'd get my book premiere in the LA Times, and everyone's, how'd you get it in the LA Times? I said, I bought it for $200 and sit there saying congratulations to R.D. Vincent for writing his book. So I did it in the celebration column.
There you go.
It's just like
Yeah.
little fun things like that. But and then I'd get on the news, or I'd be on talk shows or TV shows or podcasts or anything else. So I've done a multitude of things. I found podcasts work, book clubs work, festivals are great. Book festivals are great, but not for selling books. They're more for making contacts. Where you want to go to festivals, you want to be at like, um, I've gone to antiques festivals. I've gone to Christmas festivals and things like that. I've sold a
Right.
ton of books. I went to the Fargo Street Fair up in South Dakota. I sold 300 books in 2 days at
Wow.
that festival. It was awesome. And
Wow.
I've been out to the Denver Irish Festival. I sold 247 books there in 2 days. And, I've been down to the Dickens on the Strand down in Galveston. And I've sold probably about 200 books there in 3 days. So,
Wow.
it depends on where you go. But,
Yeah. Those
you know,
numbers are unbelievable.
yeah, but
I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed to tell you what I sell when I go to one of these things. When I hear that,
I could tell you that the next best place has been grocery stores. And, about 5 years ago, I met Deborah Fontiera, who owned the Kroger's and authors and Kroger stores at the time. That's what it was called back then.
right?
And she showed me an author selling books in the grocery store, and I was like, okay, well, does this really work? And then I was watching the author signing books, handing it to the customers, and they were checking them out at the register, and it was working. And I mean,
Mhm.
they weren't selling a ton of books at first. They maybe sell 20, 30 books at a time at a book signing. And then
Right.
over the course of 2 or 3 days, they were selling 40 or 80 books.
Yep.
And then they were constantly doing this every week, and that turns into a lot of books pretty quickly. It starts
Sure.
snowballing. So I joined the program. My first year, I sold 2,000 books in Kroger, and then I told her, I said, "Boy, if you ever want to move on or retire from this business, I'd love to take it over." And lo and behold, it was about 2018 in the or 2000 yeah 2018 in the fall. I get a phone call from her 9:30 at night. She says, "I've been talking with my husband. We're retiring and we're leaving Texas. Do you want the program?" I said, "Yeah, but I got a question. Can I take it national?" And she said, "Yeah, go ahead." And I said, "I'm going to change the name of it too. Are you good with that?" She said, "Yeah, go for it." And that was 4 years ago, and now we're the National Authors and Grocery Stores program. We are in 9 states, in 800 stores. We are in Washington, Oregon, Alaska, Idaho, Arizona, Colorado, Michigan, Texas, Louisiana, and we're constantly growing, taking on more grocery stores. We're in Fred Meyer's, Fry's, Food and Drug Store. We are in City Market. We're in King Soopers and Kroger, and we're growing. And it's been a great program. Kroger has been an awesome supporter of our program for 20 years. 20 years we've been supported with Kroger. And
Wow.
we've got over 500 to 700, I think, no, excuse me, 600 titles in our program today and over 130 authors in the program.
That's
So,
amazing.
yeah, we're doing great. And I'm really proud of everybody. And it's a great program. And
Now you
here's our
you
T-shirt. I don't know if you can see it.
yeah, it looks good. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
Yeah. I got to get me one of those once I
yeah,
join.
we're working on them. So,
Okay.
but it's a great
What
program.
now what's your actual title in the company? Are you the CEO or
I'm the president and owner of the company.
the president and owner? Okay,
Yep.
just I get that straight on my intro. I
Yep.
have to go back in and make an adjustment there.
Yeah,
That's all right.
we president and owner, and my administrative assistant is Faye Walker. She's been working with me this year. She's been helping me out, and it's a community thing. I work it on the weekends and stuff like
Right.
that because that's when everything happens. She handles all the stuff, day-to-day stuff, so I don't get involved with that. But I love it. It's a great, fun community program, and we've helped so many authors get out there and get their name out there and sell their books. And I encourage everyone to go check out authorsingrocerystores.com. Again, that's authorsingrocerystores.com. Check it out. You can even visit us on Facebook at National Authors and Grocery Stores or National Authors and Grocery Stores on Facebook, National Authors and Grocery Stores. Visit us there. So yeah, come meet us, come join us, come enjoy the fun.
Well, you beat me to that because I was going to say you got to give me your webpage, and you did it. That's good. Yeah, I think it's a great program. I mean, I'm not in it myself yet, but I intend to get in it very soon. And I think it's an opportunity for new authors, especially, to get some exposure out there. Because I mean, there's nothing better than a handshake and a hello.
Yeah.
To get people to get comfortable with you, read, take a look at your books. They may not like every book you write, but I'm sure most people will be interested in seeing what you do.
Great.
Yeah, especially avid readers. I mean, I find that a lot of readers. I had a couple that emailed me and said, "I'm not really into historical fiction, but I read your first book and I thought it was really good." And she says, "So I'm going to try another one." So it happens. I mean, people do have priorities and particular likes and dislikes, but sometimes with readers, especially, they're willing to experience other genres and other subjects because they just love to read. So that's always in the new author's advantage.
Yep. Agreed.
So,
Well,
well,
very
look,
good.
this has been a great one. This was a good interview, Ray. I appreciate your time, and
Yeah.
I think the people that are watching this are going to get a lot out of this.
I hope so. And we're always available. You can reach out to me on Facebook, Raymond Vincent Depew, or at National Authors and Grocery Stores on Facebook. And you can also email me at rayd792002 at yahoo.com, or again, authorsandgrocerystores.com.
And we're gonna put that on the screen at the end of the show, so everybody has a chance to write it down again too. But this has been super. I really appreciate your time, and I think people got a lot out of this interview, and I know I did. And
Well,
I can't wait to read your books.
I appreciate you, Dan, and I appreciate your son for inviting me on board, and I hope to talk with you guys again soon.
Okay, thanks, Ray. You take care now.
All right, bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
Hello, everyone. My name is Keith Davidson, owner of RCJ Productions. I want to thank you for watching this episode of Bios to Books with author and owner of National Authors and Grocery Stores, Ray Depew. If you're interested in the program, you can email authorsandgrocerystores.com. You may also reach out to Ray on Facebook. If you're in the market for new books to read, check out some of these great authors and their works, many who have appeared on Bios to Books. Be sure to also check out books from Dan Davidson and Rich Marcano, Butterfly Wish, Twice Upon a Time, Soul of Juby Walker, and coming soon, Tasting Raindrops. If YouTube and podcast are your thing, please check out some more RCJ productions such as The Truth About Beer and Coffee Table Chronicles, Highway to Your Health, and many more. If you're interested in starting your own podcast or YouTube channel, please contact RCJ Productions for all your audio and video needs. Thank you for watching Bios to